All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. If anybody else joins, we'll just let them jump in and start rolling with us. I'll just say right up front that we are recording this session tonight. So that's for anyone who isn't able to be here, but also for you guys. We're going to be going through kind of a lot of information, maybe a little bit quickly. So this recording will be posted. You'll be able to see it, review it, and we'll also have the slides posted as well. So you can just flip through those and look at anything after the fact. All right. So welcome everyone to Grow Appalachia, Upper Ohio Valley 2021. That's kind of a mouthful. We're still maybe working on the name a little bit. If you guys have any ideas for a name for this group, feel free to throw them out there. But we're so glad you're here. This is the first year that we are hosting this program. It is really exciting for us, and we're glad to have such a great group of people to start it with. Just really quickly, I'll go over the agenda for tonight. We're going to start with a little bit of welcome and introductions. We'll touch on your participant binder, which you haven't seen yet, but we are going to get to you guys soon. We'll talk a little bit about seed orders, and then the bulk of the evening we'll spend talking about the garden planning information, which is the real meat of the meeting. And then we'll talk about some next steps because we want to get you guys the stuff that you need to get started. If you have questions at any point throughout the evening, feel free to just write them in the chat box. We'll be stopping a few times to pick questions out of the chat, and we'll try to get everybody's answered. And if there are questions that you still have lingering after this, you know how to get a hold of me. Probably been bugging you quite a lot by now. So feel free to email me, put them in the chat for tonight. Oh, no. Okay, so welcome and introductions. My name is Hannah. I work for Grow Ohio Valley. I have worked for Grow Ohio Valley. I'm going into my 5th year, and I manage a lot of the education community outreach programs that we do. And my partner for tonight, if you want to introduce yourself, Phoebe.
Yeah, hi, I'm Phoebe. I am a AmeriCorps member for the education team here at Grow Ohio Valley. I will be here for a year-long service term, so I will be here to see you guys through the Grow Ohio Valley or the Grow Appalachia program, and I'm so excited you guys are here.
Awesome. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Grow Ohio Valley, we are an urban agriculture nonprofit. We're based in Wheeling, West Virginia. We've been around since about 2014, doing various things. We operate several farm sites, urban farm sites within the city of Wheeling, and also a larger rural site along Wheeling Creek. And we have a whole host of educational programming. We work a lot with youth to build nutritional literacy and resilience in with kids, and we also are helping people start gardens. So we're really excited to be working with you guys. The part of my slide that didn't load was a really cute picture of my coworker's 2 kids next to some cucumbers. So maybe I'll send you that. We're working with a few partners to accomplish this project. We're definitely not doing it alone. One of the largest being Grow Appalachia. So Grow Appalachia is a project based out of Berea College in Kentucky, and they give grants to organizations all throughout Appalachia to have programs like this. So there's a lot of these programs around. There's a few in West Virginia, there's some in Kentucky and Tennessee, and we're the newest of those programs. So Grow Appalachia, great partner. The icon that didn't load over here was the West Virginia Family Resource Network. So a big thanks to the FRN people for helping get the word out about this, and they'll be involved in helping distribute supplies as well. Try This West Virginia. I know Lori Ruberg is on the call tonight. Hey, Lori. Lori works for Try This West Virginia, and they have helped organize this project across all of the counties. And then WVU Extension is helping with some of the content planning and other support. Great group. All right, so on to participant binders. We'll touch on this pretty quick because there's not a lot to talk about the binder until you can see it. But I'll just say that all of you guys are going to receive a binder, a physical binder with detailed information about the seeds, about your harvest tracking responsibilities that I think I mentioned in the first email, but haven't talked a whole lot about. And then a lot of information about growing and maintaining the plants that you guys are going to be starting. We are going to start giving those binders away next week. We have times set for Thursday and Friday. For the Ohio and Marshall County folks, we're going to be starting our distribution on Thursday from 2 to 6 at the old OVMC. And again, I'll send you guys an email with all this information so you don't have to remember it all right now. And on Friday, we're going to hit the Brook and Hancock folks at the Brook Hancock FRN to hand out a physical binder with a lot of information. If you are not around either of those days to pick up your binder, no worries. We'll figure out a different time to get that to you. Just please let me know so we can coordinate that offline. But in the meantime, I will send you a link to look at an online version. We have a Google Drive folder with all of the information that we're going to put in the binder. If you guys don't already have a Gmail account or a Google account, I recommend maybe looking into that because it's really helpful. There's a lot of online tools that we can use by having a Gmail account. And if you have questions about that, you can let me know too. We can help get you set up. And if you haven't already signed and returned your participant agreement, thank you to those of you who have. We will have paper copies at the binder pickup that you can sign and return right there. And just a quick word on seed orders. So after this session, I know I sent you guys some information about the seeds just to get you thinking on it a little bit. After this session, you'll have a chance to really think about what plants are going to work in your space. So for the next week, before we get you guys the binders, you can think about that. We'll distribute some updated seed information along with the binders next week, including your order forms. So we'll have an order form that you guys will fill out and return to us, and we will get you all the seeds, hopefully everything that you request. It's been a crazy year for ordering seeds. People are going at it like crazy. So we're hoping to have everything that we wrote on that sheet for you guys. We're hoping that'll all be available, but we just ask for a little patience if we're a little late to get some of that stuff because people have really been buying seeds. And we'll just want those by the end of March. We are in the process of getting those seeds delivered to us. So we'll have them to get to you. So there's no worry about them being sold out. And just again, a reminder, these will be posted so you guys can reference them. No need to be like furiously taking notes because I'm gonna share all this with you later. Okay, I think it's time to get into it. This is why you guys are here, right? You're ready to grow a garden. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Phoebe talk a little bit so you can hear somebody's voice other than mine.
Okay. Just apologies in case my dog barks. That might be a bit of a startle, but yeah, so growing a garden, it very much is an exercise in failure. I've grown for some community gardens. I'm from southeastern Ohio originally, and you know, it definitely the weather can play a very large part into that as well. Even, if we're trying to do everything that we can, there's just some things out of our control. But, I mean, the good thing is that it is a continuing thing, and every season you can, take from what you like failed or from last year and, implement it for the next year. And, it's very much about kind of fine tuning, and it's very hands-on learning. But yeah, definitely embrace failure as a learning opportunity. There's always going to be more growing seasons, and you can even extend growing seasons as well. Definitely, I'm not sure if this is going to be in the participant binder, but a good log will definitely help. And trying to keep good notes, and will help you kind of reference for next year, because I'm very much the type of person that is like, oh, I'll remember, and then like a week later I forget. So writing it down, documenting, so the next time it comes around, definitely helps. And then the photos on there actually are some tomatoes that are experiencing some blossom end rot that I had last year due to inconsistent watering, but it is a calcium deficiency that occurs. And I actually had it happen on a lot of Roma tomatoes that are more so for canning, because they have less juicy kind of insides. It's better for canning. But yeah, I mean, definitely always just like be open to learning on how to improve. And yeah, and then sorry, I'm going through the slides on my computer.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to go through a few topics tonight. There's different phases to planning a garden. And this is an overview of what we're going to look at. So we're going to start with site selection, the actual piece of land within your yard or near your apartment, wherever you're going to put your garden. We're going to talk about preparation for tilling. We're going to talk about preparing your garden beds, doing some garden planning, like actually thinking about what you're going to grow, how much of it, when you're going to plant it, all that stuff. And then we're going to learn how to draw a garden map.
Yeah, so first things first, site selection. Unfortunately, it's very, hard to have rolling acres for, all of the garden space that we want to grow with things. Very much, it's probably not going to be the most ideal conditions, and that's totally okay. Just trying to work with what you have, and definitely there are ways to amend the soil if the soil's an issue. But yeah, the location probably not going to be optimal, but there are ways to work around it. So yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah, and this might mean a couple of these comments might seem a little bit negative, but that's just to say that we want to take all the pressure off, like there's no pressure to have a perfect garden the first time you do it. You're going to learn something every single day when you're gardening. And this picture is of a strip of grass next to the sidewalk in downtown Wheeling, which we were able to grow all those flowers on. So you can do a lot with an imperfect space, all that to say. So ideally, when you're selecting a space for your garden, you want it to be a relatively flat spot. You don't want things to be rolling down the hill. You want it to receive at least 8 hours of sunlight per day. Much less than that, and your plants are going to be struggling to create all the food that they need to survive, with a slight preference to morning light. So you want it also to be near a water source. Gardens need water. You need to water your plants. So you just want to be thinking about where that water will be coming from. If you have a tap on the outside of your house, obviously that's going to be ideal. But if you don't, you just want to be thinking about where you're going to be hauling water from to water your plants. So you also want to put your garden in a space where a shovel can go down at least a foot before it hits something. And this can be sometimes a little challenging in urban areas. I know a lot of our farms, they were built on areas that used to have buildings that were torn down. So there's like a lot of fill and rubble and stuff. And that might be the situation for some of you guys too, but just stick a shovel in a few places and see if you can get it down a foot. If not, you're going to want to be adding soil and material to build it up so that you get enough space for your plants to comfortably have their roots. And then just a note that if you see moss on the ground instead of grass or other plants growing, that is an indicator that it's a shady spot or has acidic soil or poor drainage. So you may want to look around and see if there's anywhere that is a little bit different.
Yeah, while gardens do love water, they do not like standing water. A lot of plants don't like to get their feet wet. So definitely, I'm not super familiar with Northern Panhandle's geography, and if you guys do have a lot of flooding, but definitely try to avoid a flood zone. And a good way to check for that is after there's a heavy rainfall, just look at where water is collecting on your land and then try to, I guess, like actively avoid that if you can. And then also, if you aren't aware of where your septic drain field is, it might be good to figure out where that is, because we don't want to be growing near the septic drain just because the stuff coming out can leach into the plants, and then that can just be bad for everyone involved. But yeah.
Yeah, and you can see the pictures that I wanted to be on this slide when I share them with you later. A couple more notes on site selection. You don't want to place it too near to any trees. Just keep in mind that a tree's roots are going to be spread as far out as the branches underground. And trees, they're really greedy. They will suck up a lot of water and nutrients that you intend to be for your plants. So if you're fertilizing your garden and there's tree roots underneath, then you're going to be fertilizing the tree. And that's not really what you want. And specifically, you want to look out for walnut. We have a lot of black walnut around here, and those produce a toxin that's really not great for plants. Some are more susceptible than others. And again, the picture, if you are unfamiliar with a black walnut, it is that it produces a round green ball-shaped fruit that has a really distinct smell, and it dissolves into like black goo by the end of the season, if you are familiar with that. So just watch out for walnuts specifically, but all trees generally when you're looking for your garden site. It's okay if there's trees around, like you can have a garden if your yard has some trees. You just don't want to put it like right up against it.
Okay. I believe we are to the survey now. I did call some people earlier, and yeah, we put this land survey together just to kind of get a better idea of the land that you guys are working with, so we can, best serve you and, the space that you're working with, because, at the end of the day, we do want you guys to succeed in doing this. So it's a pretty short questionnaire, just kind of asking about slope, if there is any standing water, if you are on private property or if you are a renter. But yeah, Hannah, I don't know if we're allowing time to fill that out now or later.
Oh, yeah, we'll send that around afterward. Just wanted to put it on your radar that it was coming. And that is just it's to help us because we're going to be preparing for tilling. And tilling, if that's a word that anyone is unfamiliar with, it is using an implement. In our case, it's going to be using a walk-behind tractor, a tiller tractor, to churn up the dirt in your garden bed. That makes it, you can do this by hand. A lot of people do it by hand, but this year we have the option to offer mechanical tilling to all of you guys if it is suited to your site, if it's appropriate. So we are asking these questions just to kind of make sure that we're going to be able to get in there with the tiller and do the site prep that you need. And not everybody will need it necessarily, especially if you already are working a garden space and your soil has already been loosened up and prepared. But if you're starting brand new, then this can be really helpful in creating a hospitable environment for the plants. So helping us prepare for tilling, in addition to taking a look at that survey, you can start anytime killing the grass that is that's already growing in the spot that you want to use for your garden. You can just start smothering it. You can use tarps, you can use cardboard, like weigh it down with rocks or bricks or whatever you have laying around. I've used wet newspaper. If you have newspapers laying around, just like get them damp and lay them out on the grass. Again, weigh them down with rocks or bricks or whatever you have. Killing the grass just helps make it a little bit easier for the tiller to go through. And that takes a couple of weeks to kill the grass if it's all covered up. And it's not 100% necessary for it to be all gone. But it makes it a little bit easier. And it'll help keep the grass from coming back and trying to grow in that space again after you plant all your plants. And the tilling, we're going to be doing that probably near the beginning of April. So you got a little bit of time looking out at that. But we'll want to be thinking about that near the beginning of April. You also may want to start adding your compost or your fertilizer before we till. There's some things to note about manure there that I'm not going to go too much into right now. We're actually going to be able to provide you guys with bags of fertilizer that you can spread on your site. So you don't have to worry about getting that. We'll bring it to you around the time that we're going to be tilling, and more details to come on that. But if you do have access to manure or compost that you want to use, you're welcome to do that too. Just take these notes into account there. You want to be really familiar with where you're getting your manure from, because there's a lot of ways it can affect your plants.
Okay. And yeah, definitely a soil test would be recommended so you can figure out what exactly is happening in the soil, and then just kind of because different fertilizers have different like amendments in them. I believe the one that we're using is nitrogen, phosphate, and there's another one, but it's escaping me at the moment. But there's going to be, different things to benefit the soil. Some of your soil may have too much of something and you might not need to add anymore. but actually the West Virginia University Extension Office has free soil testing, and I believe that link will take you to the application that you can fill out online and get that sent in, and then get started on the soil testing, which figuring out what is going on in the soil is going to help tremendously in, trying to, especially in like if this is your first time growing, figuring out what's going on in there and, what plants are best suited for that and, what plants to avoid. But yeah, that link should be
Yeah.
available.
Yeah, and I'll also include the form that you need to fill out for your soil test in the binder, so you guys can get a copy of that. But this website, the WVU, you can even just Google WVU Extension soil test, and they have just a really, really great page with a lot of details about how to collect a soil sample and how to prepare it before you send it in. And we really encourage everybody to do this. If you need any help getting walked through it or figuring it out, we'd be happy to help. But yeah, just as Phoebe said, it's really important to know what's going on in your soil, because if something's happening to your plants, like that calcium deficiency in the tomato that she talked about in the beginning, like you're not going to know unless you've had your soil tested. So Lori, to answer your question, yes, you can get started with a soil test and it is free. Related to that, Pam is asking if the specimen can be taken to our local office. I will figure that out. I know the Ohio County Extension agent, her name is Karen Cox, and she has volunteered herself to be of assistance with our soil tests. I'll ask her about taking it to a local office, but generally they ask them to be mailed to the lab. But I'll send you guys some more information about that coming up. Yeah. Great. Thank you. I don't know 2ALATW. I don't know your name, but thank you. For Marshall County does it, but you may have to mail it. Okay. So after we get everything ready for tilling and everything is all tilled up, you're going to be preparing your garden rows. Thanks, Tammy. So the rows are just like the orientation of your garden. These are where you're going to put your plants when you're ready to plant them. So when you're thinking about where those rows are going to be, what they're going to look like, you want to keep some things in mind. So ideally, you're going to want your rows to run east to west if your location is flat. And in the Panhandle, we have kind of a nice thing to weigh that against, which is the Ohio River runs north to south. So your rows, you want them to be perpendicular, which means like crossing and across to the Ohio River east to west. If you're on a slope, you want to orient your rows along the contour, which means if I'm on a hill, I don't want my rows to be like this. I want them to be like this. Again, it's perpendicular. So you want them to run along the contour and not like down the hillside. That's going to help prevent soil from washing away. It's going to help prevent you having to like walk down the slope at an angle when you're trying to cultivate your beds. If you just want it to be along the contour, because it's a lot easier to manage them that way. I don't know how many of you guys have sloped land, so maybe that won't be an issue, but it's okay if it is. We can make it work. We just want to keep those things in mind.
Okay, so to add on to preparing garden rows, it's best practice to raise up the rows into permanent planting areas and walking areas. Planting beds should be about 2 to 4 feet wide, depending. vining varieties are definitely going to take up a lot more space, as the season progresses, and definitely allocating space for that. Walking paths should be, a foot to 18 inches wide. Yeah, walking paths definitely make harvesting easier, that you don't have to kind of put yourself into weird positions and try to make, because gardening is kind of hard on the body. So walking paths kind of make harvesting easier and just kind of general upkeep. And as someone who is definitely guilty of having crooked beds, definitely marking them out with stakes or string is a very good way to make sure that they're straight and just kind of have uniform rows. And then, you know, uh, this, if didn't add compost before tillage, this is, a very good time to add compost to the soil. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely guilty of it. I think we all are, but it's definitely try not to step in the planting beds, and try to leave that land as like untouched by kind of, like just the gross stuff that we're going to have on like the bottoms of our shoes and stuff. But I'm definitely guilty of it. But yeah, just trying to be honest, and like when planning out how much space you're actually going to need to be able to effectively harvest.
Yeah, man, I will say, I don't know if you guys have ever gardened with kids, but the minute you let a kid into your garden, never step in the beds really goes out the window unless you're really clear about it up front. So it's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world if somebody puts a foot in the bed, but you really want to protect those as best as you can, because if they get stepped on and compacted, that's going to ruin all of the work that you've done to cultivate the soil with the tilling and the like the gentle cultivation, and it'll compact it and make it just less hospitable for the plants. So don't step in your beds. That's where the plants sleep. And I think we're on to a quick break. We're about halfway through here. I want to get you guys out of here by 7:30. So we're gonna go ahead and take 5 minutes, do what you need to do, get up, stretch, get a drink, and then we'll come back and take a few questions. There's a few questions in the chat now that we can touch on when we get back. And if anybody has any more at this point, feel free to drop them in there. So I'll see you guys back here at 6:48. All right, we'll give people another moment, but while we're waiting, there's been a couple of questions about raised beds. Raised beds maybe being an option to consider if you have a lot of junk in your soil. And somebody asking maybe if you want to continue using raised beds or extend your space if you already have raised beds, extend it to allow for in-ground growing. And I'll say that raised beds can be they can be useful, especially in those situations where you have soil that's maybe not the best, because it gives you an opportunity to bring in better soil while you're working on that stuff below. I would say if you can use the space in ground for growing, I would use this as an opportunity to do that, because we're gonna be able to provide the tools to cultivate that space to make it a good growing space. And I would also say if raised beds are the best option for you, just know that a raised bed, a lot of times when we think of a raised bed, we think of that like wooden box that you fill with soil, but it doesn't have to necessarily even have a box around it. So a raised bed can just be you building up soil in your bed, just like adding and continuously building up. It doesn't necessarily have to have a frame. And doing it without a frame can be quite a bit cheaper than going for that wooden box. So raised beds, they could be an option. Remember, you don't have to use the wooden box. And if you can use your in-ground space, that's what I would recommend, just because it allows you to get a bit more space, more plants in, and more food grown. But there's nothing wrong with raised beds, especially if you just want to grow a little bit. Let's see, when would be the last date to get soil checked before gardening starts? That's a great question. I would really recommend getting your soil test in within the next 2 weeks, because we're going to want to be tilling in the beginning of April, and I'm just not sure. I'll try to get a hold of the lab, but I'm not sure. I'm guessing a bunch of people are probably sending their tests in, and you don't necessarily have to have your results back before you start preparing your ground. But I would do it sooner rather than later, just because I think a lot of people are probably going to be trying to get soil tests right now. It's just the sooner you get it, yeah. If you send it, it might take a while. And I'll see, again, I'm going to contact the lab and see if maybe we could do a group delivery. Morgantown's not that far away, but I haven't thought that idea fully through yet. So I will think about it a little bit more before I talk about it to you guys. But yeah, definitely we want to be getting soil tests done sooner rather than later, because we want that knowledge to be able to go into the planting with. Okay, gonna go ahead and go to the next slide here. Okay, so we talked about our site a little bit, and now we're gonna talk about planting our crops. Like, what are we going to grow and why are we going to grow it? So crop planning, why should you do it? Because it helps you know how much harvest you can expect, when you can expect it, and how often you can expect to have it. It really just gives you all the information, or as much information as you can really get based on the unpredictableness of the weather and everything. But it really does. It can do a lot to help you know what you're going to have and when. It can help prevent disease issues in future years through crop rotation. We don't want to let diseases build up in the soil. And also, we're providing a lot of people with these supplies, so we want to be able to get you what you need and what you'll use. And this can be kind of a lot, to figure out the first time you do it, but it does get easier as you go along.
Yeah, so to continue off of that, there's some questions that you should definitely, ask, like, what do you want to grow? Is there any particular vegetables that there's nothing quite like a garden fresh tomato. I didn't like tomatoes until I grew one and realized that they were quite flavorful. How much do you want of each thing? With like a zucchini or something like that. Sometimes less is more, especially with the summer squash. They too tend to produce a lot. When are you going to plant it? Because some, crops really do like that, middle of the summer dead, just like they love the heat, and other ones prefer more of an early spring to, early fall, not as much of an intense heat. And then when can you expect to harvest it? And I believe in the seed order, we did include days to maturity. So how long is it going to take before you can actually start to harvest? And then do you need to plan to resow things periodically? Radishes and lettuce definitely come to mind with this question. They definitely encourage a lot of reseeding because they have pretty quick turnaround. So you can enjoy multiple harvests throughout the grow season. How much space does it need? Again, summer squash definitely comes to mind. Does take up a lot of space. They do have some varieties to help kind of counteract that. And then most importantly, where will you plant everything?
Great. So we'll start with, what do you want to plant? And just a few things, a few questions to help you think through that. You've probably already been thinking through it a little bit, but this can help guide that thought process. So just thinking about, what do you like to eat? You want to grow something that you're going to want to eat, or that you have a purpose for, and not just do it and then end up with something you're not going to want. You can think about what you buy the most of at the store. Maybe you could try to counteract a little bit of that spending by growing it yourself. And to that end, what do you wish you could eat more of, but it's just too expensive to buy? It's not worth buying it in the store. Maybe you could grow it instead. Think about what you want to try canning or freezing for the winter. If you want to have stuff to store, then you're going to probably want to grow a little bit more in the summer. And just think about your history. If you had a garden last year, what did and didn't do well in your space? And then what new vegetables would you like to try? There's always room for a little experimentation.
And then we have the question, how much are you going to plant? And, we have this plant cheat sheet, which has a range of how many plants per person to grow. And for eating once or twice per week, go with a lower range. But, if you do want to try your hand at canning or freezing, definitely go for the higher range and double or triple the amount. And then, definitely planting 10 to 20% more than you think you'll need for disease, pests, critter, hail. Deer love tomatoes. They can say that marigolds deter deer, and they don't, and nothing deters deer. So just trying to account for that, and definitely trying to, make sure that you have enough for the harvest, and, with canning and stuff, make sure that there is some for that as well. But yeah, I don't know if the little photo is on that or not, but
Oh, it is. This one is. Yeah, so this is a picture of that. I think we sent this out in one of the first emails. This is the plant cheat sheet that has kind of a guide of how many plants that you might plant per person in your household that's going to eat it. And this is, like, again, it is just a guide. If you have had experience and this is not the right number for you, then go with the number that you know is right. But this, if you're just starting out, can be a good estimation for you.
I just saw in the chat, we can just answer this now. There was a question about what succession means, and succession is just going to be how many times you're going to plant during a season. So like radishes are going to have multiple successions, while like tomatoes is just going to be like one. So how many times you're planting during the season. But yeah, just wanted to get that out of the way.
We'll talk about that in a little more detail, I think, coming up. Okay, and so when are you going to plant it? Different plants need to be planted at different times, depending on what they like and how they thrive. So up where we are in northern West Virginia, there's 3 general planting times. The first one is early spring, which is March, April-ish. Then we have late spring, early summer, which will be around May, June, and then late summer, August and September. So this mostly has to do with what temperature the plants prefer to grow in. So there's cool weather crops that need to be planted in early spring, where it's still kind of cool from the winter, or late summer when it's cooling off. And the crops that are mostly, they like to thrive in cool weather, are leafy greens, brassicas, which is a family of plants that includes broccoli and cabbage and Brussels sprouts and some other stuff. Peas like cool weather, and most of your root vegetables. So your beets, your carrots, turnips, all that good stuff. And then hot weather crops should be planted in the ground in early summer when there's no more danger of frost. And this can be, we've had kind of an unpredictable few years for frost. I think it frosted pretty late in May last year, and that it killed a few things. So we'll just want to be keeping an eye, and I'll be keeping an eye, you guys should too, on the frost dates, because it can be kind of tricky around here. But that'll be most of your fruit-bearing plants like tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, and sweet potatoes also really like the warm weather.
And so the question is now, when are you going to harvest it? And then on the back of seed packets, I believe the seeds that we will be distributing out to you will be in like our own packaging, but we can probably include, I assume we'll include that in on the repackaging, and also definitely reference the plant cheat sheet. There is gonna have so many resources to, you know, kind of help like best accommodate the crops. And then some plants are harvested once and killed, broccoli, cabbage, corn, lettuce, root crops, and then that will open up more space again in your garden. Some plants have a harvest window of several weeks before the plants die, that being bush beans, peas, cucumber, summer squash, and need to be replaced once or twice per summer. And then some plants are continuously harvested up until the frost kills them, such as peppers, tomatoes, pole beans, kale, chard, herbs, winter squash, and etc.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us into the whole concept of succession, which so when you harvest one thing and it's removed from your garden, you open up space to plant either that thing again or a new thing. And that can kind of be, it can be like a lot to think about and a lot to balance, especially if it's your first year doing it. And there's not pressure necessarily to do succession gardening your first year. If you want to just plant one thing and be done with it when it's done, that's totally okay. But if you want to continuously eat a certain food for the whole season, then you're going to want to think about doing successions. So yeah, I didn't even flip to the slide. How often will you replant it? This is known as succession sowing. So like I just said, do you want to harvest a single plant every week? Then you're going to need to plan for space to sow it every week. And that'll be for stuff like Phoebe said, your lettuce, radishes, spinach, broccoli, carrots. Those will be about every week that you'll need to sow new ones. And then some, if you want to have them for the whole season, they'll just need to be replaced once or twice. And let's see, I can take the lettuce production. So this is just an example of that succession concept. So lettuce takes about 5 weeks to grow. So if you want to eat lettuce for 10 weeks over the whole summer, you just need to plan for space for 5 weeks. See if you follow me here. Then after 5 weeks, you can start over again and plant in the week 1 space. It's a little, this one took me a second to wrap my head around, but you just need 5 weeks worth of space to eat 10 weeks worth of lettuce. And if we can also answer questions about this as they come up, but this is important to think about when you're planning out your space, just for things that you're going to want to eat over the whole season.
Yeah, and definitely using harvest dates to extend successions and just trying to kind of line things up, because, you know, different plants just like different. So yeah, some crops have varieties with very different harvest windows. Broccoli, cabbage, corn are all, potatoes are very good examples. And then choosing either a 60-day, 80-day, or 100 days to harvest varieties. And then, you know, plant once and then have, you know, many weeks of harvest to enjoy. And then if you do want a full season of, you know, these varieties, you will need to make the successions every 3 to 4 weeks of the same varieties. But this bit does not work for potatoes. They are storage crops, so just plant extra.
Yeah. So does that make sense? They have different varieties take longer to mature. So if you get like a broccoli variety, you can get 3 different broccoli varieties. One that matures in 60 days, one that matures in 80 days, one that matures in 100 days. Plant them all at the same time, and then they'll be ready at different times. So you can just harvest them as they're ready and not have to replant necessarily. Yes, all of these plants are all of these plants listed on the cheat sheet full sun? Some of them can do a little bit better in shade. Maybe we can make a note of that on the sheet just so you guys can reference it. Regardless of what plants you're picking off that sheet, you want to try your best to get them those 8 hours of sun, so that it can be healthy. So how much space does it need? This is also listed out on that sheet, how much space each plant needs. You can also check the seed packet, but a lot of times the seed packet will list a spacing that's quite a bit bigger than what you actually need to use. So the spacing that's listed on the sheet is a little bit condensed to what you'll see on a seed packet, but it can help you get squeeze more plants into your space and still keep them healthy. So there's just some examples. Squash, they get really big, so they need about 3 feet between plants. Tomatoes need 1.5 feet, and you can fit 12 carrots or radishes per square foot. So plants, they need different spacing depending on their needs and how big they're gonna get. This is just a note about square foot gardening. This is a technique that a lot of people talk about and some people use successfully, but around here, the concept is packing like quite a bit into a square foot. But this technique was invented in California, which is very dry. And the weather here is very humid in the summer. So plants packed really closely together will trap a lot of moisture and therefore will attract a lot of disease. So a lot of fungal diseases and bacterial diseases, they will thrive on plants that are constantly wet. So you want to make sure to give your plants plenty of air circulation so that they can dry out and not catch those diseases. They're always coming up from the soil. There's not much you can do about that. So next, you need to figure out if your garden will fit everything you want to grow.
Okay, now I think we're really getting into the meat of it. So where will you plant it? You can, draw your garden out by hand. Graph paper definitely helps with that if you have any lying around, or an Excel spreadsheet. And I think we're going to show an example of what that would look like in an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, one map may do you at first. It gets a little extensive, but I think having everything visualized out for you is definitely going to, make it a little less daunting once you actually start to break soil. For complex plans, you can draw one for spring, summer, and fall, but again, for first timers, definitely I think one is going to potentially be a little daunting, but we are going to try to make it as easy and accessible for everyone as we can. And then, in the questionnaire, we did talk about the garden's dimensions. So however much space you're working it out with, if you are doing it on graph paper, you can do like an inch per foot or whatever, is going to be easiest for you to see and be able to draw into. And then also figuring out your sun pattern is excellent, and figuring out what way, where the sun rises and sets. And then definitely orient rows east to west if on flat ground, and then orient rows along contour lines if on a slope. And Hannah was speaking of that earlier. But yeah.
Yeah, and we will give you guys some graph paper with your binder too, if you're more of a hand sketcher. I like to do it by hand first and then put it into a spreadsheet. Are any of you guys spreadsheet people? Maybe I see some heads shaking. It's great. It's maybe worth learning, but it's also totally fine to do it by hand. Totally fine. So for garden mapping, there's just a little bit of jargon, which maybe you guys have all heard already by now, but just so when I say these words, this is what they mean. The pathway, that's the space you're gonna walk in. In this little picture in the corner that is marked in brown. The bed is the space you will plant in and not walk in. The row is a line of plants, and you can have multiple rows of crops per bed, depending on how much space your crop needs. And then a row foot or a bed foot is a 12 by 12 space that's located in your bed. So a bed that is 3 feet by 20 feet will contain 60 row feet. That's essentially a square foot, but we're putting it in the context of the bed. So when you're doing your garden map, you want to draw out your beds and pathways to scale. So they're going to be, you're going to be able to look at that and know that that's what you're going to see when you're out in your garden. You probably want to keep your beds to under 4 feet wide, just because realistically your arm is not going to be comfortable to reach more than 2 feet into your bed to reach the other side of it. So you want to try to keep them to under 4 feet just so you can get to all of the parts of them. And then for your pathways, usually 12 inches to 24 inches. is what's recommended, but you just want to think about what kind of space you're going to need to walk down it and kneel down comfortably, because you're going to be spending some time kneeling in that bed, doing your harvesting or your pruning or whatever you need to do. You really want it to be tailored to you. And it's very convenient if your garden is along a sidewalk, so you can just use your sidewalk as a pathway.
Okay. So yeah, on this next slide, this is a map that has everything kind of already worked out, and you can kind of see, or kind of get your head wrapped around of what that could potentially look like. However, there is some. Now it's time for math, which is not my favorite subject. But you definitely do want to, like, you have to plan and plant for the mature size of the plant. Again, when zucchini start out, it's gonna be, very small, but once they get into the heat of the summer, they will take over everything. And if, since tomatoes need a foot and a half of space, and you have 15 feet of space, how many tomatoes can you plant? I'm not sure. Are we doing this in the chat, or
if you guys are mental math people, you can do that. We could also just tell you the answer. It's 10 tomatoes. Thank you, Kara. How about the zucchini? If you have 2 by 3, or if a zucchini needs 2 feet by 3 feet and you have 2 feet by 10 feet, exactly, you can plant 3 zucchini plants. And if you can fit 12 carrots per square foot and you have 2 feet by 5 feet of space, how many carrots can you plant? I think that's right, 120 carrots. So you're just, you're gonna take, in that case, 2 times 5 to get the bed feet of available space, which is 10. So if in a 2 foot by 5 foot space, you have 10 bed feet, and you can fit 12 carrots per square foot or bed foot, then you can fit 120 carrots. You're all ready for the math part now. Yeah, now to actually plan it for yourself is another thing, but it's pretty simple stuff. It may take a second to sit down and work it out, but that's as complicated as the calculation will be. So if you can do that, then you can do this for your garden. And if you need help, then please ask, because we would love to help. Okay, I think this is my slide. Just a couple notes about trellising. So trellising, if you could see my picture, you would see some peas climbing up a net, growing upward away from the ground. So trellising is when you, there are some plants that will climb up instead of grow along the ground, and those are plants that you can trellis or attach to some kind of structure to keep them growing up off of the ground. So trellising lets you grow crops vertically, and it will save you a lot of space because using the vertical space saves you a lot of room on the ground, so you can plant more things. Like this says, a tomato on the ground will take up 5 feet by 5 feet of space, but on a trellis, it only takes up 1.5 by 1 feet of space. So you have a lot of other space to plant other crops around your trellised crops. Just for example, if you're growing tomatoes or cucumbers up on a trellis, you can plant other herbs or edible flowers around the base of them. Just get the full use of that space. For pole beans, you could put a leafy green like lettuce or kale, and that would be happy with the extra nitrogen. So a note about that, beans are what they call nitrogen fixers. their legumes. The legume family fixes nitrogen, which means that it makes the nitrogen that exists in the soil available for the plant to use. Plants really love nitrogen, they need it, but it's not always in a form that they can process when it's in the soil. But these plants, the nitrogen fixers, they can make that nitrogen available for any plant to use, which is great for them. So if plants are around these nitrogen fixers, they will also get the benefit of extra nitrogen. And nitrogen is really good for leafy stuff, just like this lettuce or kale. If you plant something next to a nitrogen fixer, it will probably end up with really robust leaves and wimpy roots, because the root's job is to go into the soil and extract the nutrients. But if there's like an abundance of nutrients around it, it doesn't have to do that. So it won't get really, really big. So like you don't want to plant a carrot next to a nitrogen fixer, because the carrot is a root vegetable and the root won't get very big. But leafy greens, they would love that. They will get really nice and big if you plant them next to a nitrogen fixer.
Yeah, gets into this whole idea of companion planting, which you know, mixing crops together in wide rows is beneficial. And it can also help keep pests away by confusing them. There's definitely a lot of complementary herbs. Basil does very well around tomatoes, and they can also attract like pollinators and just other good insects for your garden. There are, you know, you will find a lot of companion planting guides online that really aren't necessarily based on any science, but a lot of diversity in the garden is good, and just kind of learning about what works well against each other. Definitely getting back to keeping detailed logs about, you know, what works well next to each other.
Yeah. Margaret in this picture is not worrying too much about the particulars. So once you've thought about all these things and you have an idea of what you want to grow in the space that you have to grow it in, if you come to the conclusion that you can't fit everything you want to grow in the garden space that you have, you can either till up more space, it's not too late, or pare down what you want to grow. Just kind of change your expectations a little bit and maybe grow a little bit less. Or if you find that you have extra room in your garden plan, you can either plant some more stuff or reduce your size a little bit. That's totally okay. Or you can save room for the random impulse buys that you're going to make next time you go to the garden store. I know I make them.
I'm also guilty. Yeah, so definitely with garden planning, yeah, I know we keep saying it, but keep notes. Even best laid plans go astray. So just make note of what happened and just treat every, you know, thing that happens over the course of the growing season as a learning experience and how to better your garden for next year. And then definitely mark down when you actually planted and harvested things. That's very good, especially when sowing seeds. If you are starting any seeds indoors, figuring out when you sowed them is very good to know when to actually put them out. And then obviously keep notes about what died and when, notes about bad weather, pest, disease. Yeah, weather will sometimes get you. It's just hard out there. And then just, you know, keep an eye on if there is any like reoccurring themes, and, you know, with good notes should help kind of like deduce what is happening in the garden, because sometimes you do have to investigate, because you think you're doing everything right and it's still just not working. So just keeping good notes about everything that you're doing, when you're sowing, so forth. And, definitely is very good reference point for next year. Your future self will thank you. But
Yeah, definitely. And this happens, like, honestly, even in our gardens and on our farm that we've been operating for more than 10 years. Like, things happen. There's going to be weird pests and disease and weather. But if you can learn from it, then you really should try to. Okay, so, man, I think we'll go here next. So the next steps, this was a lot of information. And I do have some other things that we can link to you guys. There's a document that for those of you who are spreadsheet people or are aspiring spreadsheet people, we have a Google Sheets doc that you can use. It's already kind of set up to fill in with the garden plan. So we'll send that around to you guys if you want to use the digital version. And we'll also have graph paper, like a good amount of graph paper in your binders for next week if you want to just sketch it out by hand. And also in those binders will be just a lot of the information we covered tonight kind of written out. And also places to track your planting dates, and a lot of things you can fill in to keep track of when you're doing stuff and what exactly you're doing. So again, I know this was a lot of information. And if you still have questions after all of that, please feel free to ask them now or hold them and email later, or hold them and see if you can puzzle through them yourself. But the next steps that we're going to go on to from here are, you're going to create your garden plan and map. I hope you feel like that was helpful for you and a little bit empowering to be able to do that. Again, please, if you feel like there's still roadblocks to you creating a garden plan and map, let us know, and we want to get those right out of the way. So go ahead and you can start doing that whenever you want to. Then you are going to fill out the plant and seed order form based on your plan. And that order form, we're going to get to you in your binder next week or whenever we see you. We're going to hand out seeds in April. So we'll start getting in touch with people about the tilling and handing out seeds by the beginning, before the beginning of April. We'll start actually doing those things in the beginning of April. And then we're going to give you guys your binders, like I said, Thursday and Friday next week. And I'm going to send you an email with all of those details. The time will be 2 to 6. Anytime in that window, you can come and meet us and have a little chat if you want to, and pick up your binder and all your information. And that will be on Thursday. We're going to do our distribution at the old OVMC parking lot for Marshall and Ohio County residents, and Friday at the Brooke Hancock FRN for the Brooke and Hancock residents. And again, I will send you an email with all of those details. And if you need assistance in the meantime, please email us. You guys already have my email address, and Phoebe's. You can find Phoebe at this address that I'll put in the chat right now.
yeah, feel free, guys. Definitely here to help, help you guys in any way I can.
Okay, So that's our the address you can find CB at. Our next workshop will be related to garden planting. So that will hopefully be able to help answer some questions about getting your seeds started and then put in the ground. So this is just to cover like the plan. We want you guys to be able to make a garden plan. And the next time we talk, we're going to talk about actually doing something with those seeds. And we'll get you the materials for that too. Yeah, I'm excited for this year too. Thanks, Tammy. Okay, so I will be in touch with those dates. I'm still coordinating with the person who's going to be facilitating that class, so I don't have an exact date for you yet, but I am, we're planning on it for before the end of March. This is the double month for our classes, which is kind of different. But I'll be in touch as soon as I know the date for that. Yeah, I'll let you guys know. So does anybody have any questions before we go? I think we're at 7:29. We're so close. Great. I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to wrap it up. Oh, I almost forgot the chicken picture. Okay, guys, thank you so much. You've been really wonderful. And I can't wait to see you in person when you come to pick up your supplies. So keep an eye in your inbox. I will be sending you many more things. And we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was very nice and helpful.
Good.
We'll see you next week.
See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you.